He presented himself in interviews and
yeah,
well,
he
just
sucks.
Isn't adding up, but his Instagram numbers definitely were.
I've watched like 2 collab videos YouTubers did with him.
Girlfriend
Unbearable.
Dan vowed to live.
Services video on him, but I have not seen Aubrey's. Yeah, poker player, and you know, he wasn't exactly a poker player. It mostly came from his dad.
Drug dealer? Oh.
No, it mostly came from his dad, I think. If I remember correctly, his dad did some kind of like real estate thing during like a crisis and made a fucking ton of money from it. Thanks to the Prime. Clipsy and the gift sub Hylian Dragon, the resub Hurla.
He said that Aubrey does a good video on him.
Sure, we can watch it.
Please welcome Instagram's most loved and hated man, Dan Bilzerian.
The king of
Dan!
His PR firm forces every article to call him
The King Alpha Male.
The King Alpha Male.
Dan Bilzerian is every 14-year-old boy's dream.
I just have bitches around me all the time. I'd be jet skiing. I'd be driving around in Ferraris and
Fuck yeah.
You're living like a life that doesn't even seem real.
Where did Dan get his money from?
Your father was a corporate takeover
Is that Trump?
specialist. He went to jail.
What? No, that was Joe Rogan.
sued by the former president.
It's just very loud.
Allegedly
No.
kicking a woman in the face at a nightclub. Did you do
It's
that?
on one of the pictures
Oh,
in the
maybe.
video.
Thanks to the Prime. Kick, smack, and the resub side quest and brutal hugging. I've watched The Violin Man.
Allow me to set the scene. The date is February 24th, 2021. A young Instagram influencer is scaling a $63 million Bel Air mansion in hopes of finding its elusive owner, the
Tom
man
Clancy.
with the perfect geometrical beard, Dan Bilzerian.
I think we're good. Come on. Dan, are you in there?
But what's the deal with this guy? Who even is he? On the surface, he looks like a bodybuilder compensating for being 5'9". A fusion of
Oh wait,
Stark
no, let's
and
not
Hugh
get carried
Hefner,
away.
professional poker
5'9's
player,
a pretty
lavish
tall.
taste, and a massive online following of over 30 million insecure teenage boys. If a
True.
lifestyle of touring the world, sleeping with models, shooting machine guns in the desert, parading around exotic animals, sitting down
Yeah.
with meatheads, posing
Yeah.
with
Oh, you're
enormous
right.
stacks of cash, partying with major celebrities, and ruining a perfectly good car with a military-grade tank seems too good to be true, that's because it is. Dan is a fraud.
Dan Bilzerian?
He doesn't live here anymore.
He was actually exiled from his California dream home just
Yeah.
last year, quietly abandoning
He
the
made-
key part of
I
his
won't
brand
spoil it,
that
actually.
made him the Giga Alpha Chad his fans once considered him to be.
Can you write any of this off? Because it's really promoting your brand and your lifestyle.
I mean, I have to talk to my accountant about all of it.
He's also the world's most
How
boring
exactly
man.
did we get here?
I've
What
watched
happened
interviews
to
and
Dan the Man
him with
Bilzerian?
YouTubers. He's
Well,
so
that's what I
boring.
want to find out. But first, we're gonna need to go
yes, there you
back to where
No, like he
it
literally
all
can't
began.
speak without being boring. Also, a little bit more on this guy that I don't know if is going to be covered in here. He, during the Las Vegas shooting, I made a video on this. I don't know if it's still up, but during the Las Vegas shooting, Dan Bilzerian tried to commandeer. Yeah, I think he took down most of the videos. Tried to commandeer a cop's gun, saying that he was a Navy SEAL who could stop the Las Vegas shooter. He wanted to be like this crazy action movie hero, so he's like crouching around behind some cars, and then he came up to a cop and was like, "Give me your gun. I'll put it into this."
What the fuck?
Yeah, he's a fucking maniac. Yeah, that was Dan. Thanks for the 10 gift subs, Tide. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you, man. Thank you for the generosity. And thanks to Tier 1 Marcus and resub Shubadup in Preston.
Daniel Brandon Bilzerian was born on December 7th, 1980 in Tampa, Florida. Coming from
of
humble
course.
beginnings, his mother was nothing more
Of
than
course.
a social worker.
Hey,
with
he's
his
doing us
father
proud.
being but a simple businessman. What kind of businessman, you ask? Just the kind that manipulates the stock market for a living.
Woo! Let's go!
And then the newspaper headlines are, and I think this is like the late 80s. He's indicted for like tax.
The real Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, if he had no
actually
personality.
That humble beginnings thing. Hard to grow up in a house like this and still pretend you're self-made, but Dan found a way.
So how did you make your money then? Playing poker. You made it all playing poker. Yeah. Wow. That is
I don't think he ever won a game, by the way.
Paul Bilzerian had become one of the richest corporate raiders in the entire region by the time Dan was just 6 years old, setting up multiple trust funds for his 2 sons before being locked away for fraud in the early 90s.
He was then ordered to pay $60 million back to the government, and after he paid back $3 million, he was like, uh-oh, I'm out of money. Anyway, on a completely unrelated note, his son Dan Bilzerian mysteriously won $50 million in 1 year playing poker, which is more than any professional poker player has made in their entire lifetime.
But trust me, we'll get back to Dan's father in a little bit. For now, I want to focus on the man, the myth, the king of Instagram. No, I'm not talking about myself, even though Dan and I do have similar followings. With over 10,000 one-night stands under his
Whoa!
Did I read that right? 10,000? 10,000 one-night stands.
And he only paid for 9,000 of them.
And I remember I had sex 9 times in one day. I was like so proud of myself.
Well, I mean, it's good Dan would never lie to us, though. I mean,
he didn't.
Just have to take his
I
word
can
for
tell
it.
you right now, he didn't.
Objectifies women on a mainstream platform, normalizing women as background rather than as actual human beings. In other words, you make women, according to them, props.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I said the same thing about Hugh Hefner, right?
Is that supposed to be a good thing? I mean, they said the same thing about Hugh Hefner. Yeah, they did.
I don't know. I just take pictures and the women are there, so I don't know. I mean, it's all up to interpretation. I mean, people can.
What is your interpretation?
I think he's a virgin.
You know, I have a bunch of women hanging around.
But make no mistake, he wasn't always the
It's a bold claim, but I think I'm right.
Vitality, though. In fact, he actually dropped out of 4 separate high schools over the span of 3 years, even being arrested for bringing a machine gun on campus his senior year.
So explain what led
Sounds
to
about right for a Freudian.
Is the resub drunk?
Well, a machine gun and a shotgun in my vehicle on school grounds would be probably what led to that. And this was right after Columbine happened, which is kind of bad timing, if you will.
Galaxy.
He Dan Bilzerian reminds me of Will Ferrell in Elf a little bit.
He decided to abandon school altogether and enlist in the Navy right after graduating.
He's a tier 1 bean in the resub Joe.
All I know is that he is said to have spent about 4 years in the Navy, apparently going through 510 grueling days of SEAL training with 2 broken legs.
You know, I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I made it through Hell Week with broken legs.
No, you did not.
And I went into medical and I asked them to look at my legs. I ran for like 2 miles and just destroyed them even more, just because I was just so sick of the military trying to get out. And they gave me what I wanted. They're going to.
He's a literal Reddit comment come to life.
For the UCMJ, that's actually a crime. He's not running for 2 miles with broken legs if he's truly hurt. It just seems like this is made for social media.
Dan's strained relationship with the U.S. military becomes
the resub
a little dicey, so stick with me here. The first step in becoming a Navy SEAL is completing basic underwater demolition training, known as BUDS for short. Meant to test physical and mental stamina, the 24-week program is described as demanding and intense.
Dan Bilzerian skipped it.
Past this one phase, but Dan has insisted he spent over 1.5 years on BUDS alone. Yeah, the same guy who struggles to land a jet ski in the water.
Oh, this is embarrassing, Dan. Oh no, don't let me see you like this, Dan. Oh, Dan, this is so sad. Dan, let's get some tools out here.
Claims his extended training and frequent rollbacks had to do with his 2 stress fractures.
I had broken legs for like 1.5 years or 1 year and 7 months. It was insane. It was basically like, they're like, okay, well, this guy's legs are just never going to fucking heal.
So why wasn't it healing? I'm still confused.
Because I went through SEAL training. That kind of fucked him
up
a little bit.
Yeah, obviously.
He officially became a SEAL. Instead, being kicked out just 2 days before.
He's just like a little kid that likes to just keep making up stories. He's just fanfic.
Gun range. challenge, or in his words, no real good reason. Yeah, I'm sure there is no real good reason.
I'm gonna give you guys some perspective. For somebody to be rolled back from training 2 days prior to graduation,
I need to give some time
there has
to
to
the
be
prime
something
Russell.
pretty significant. They call Navy SEALs often the $1 million man, and that's because how much it costs to train these guys and how much time goes into that. So he doesn't dive into that, but I will say that does bring some red flags or questions.
There's
You
a
have
tier
to
1
have done something really
Mamoru.
bad or be very highly disliked, I would say.
Rumors of Dan falling asleep during training and getting into arguments with officers have since circulated online. And although I have no real way to verify any of these testimonies, just the thought of Dan's former class making up songs to mock him after he got
Yeah, I know that
dropped
one, Saren. That's
is
great.
really beautiful to me.
And this instructor that didn't like me, he couldn't even find excuses the third time. He just admin dropped me. I didn't even know that was like a thing. I didn't even know you could get admin drop, but yeah.
Hey, a broken leg and an honorable discharge.
Thanks for the huge
still
20
gave
gift
our
subs,
man
Fancy
an
Feast.
alleged
Good to see you again
$6,000
tonight.
disability
Thank you, man.
allowance.
Appreciate the
I was
generosity.
getting the GI Bill and the
Thank you, Fancy
VA
Feast.
was paying me, and I was getting grants.
Hope
and
you had a good
everything
day.
for school, and so I was making pretty good money for a college student.
Despite, yes, completing about 99% of the military's toughest training, his love-hate relationship with
Dan
the Navy
embodies
extends even
shonen.
further into
Yeah.
his later
He
years.
watched one
He
anime
paid
and then
his
said,
way into
I
a
can pretend to be
military
this.
film in 2013, pumping $1 million into production in exchange for 8 minutes of screen time they ended up cutting down to 60 seconds. Even trying to
Yeah!
afterwards. Yeah.
I forgot about that.
What's going on? Nothing, bro. I'm about to get out of here with my girl.
Hey, that's pretty good acting,
Before
though,
any
to be
of
fair.
that, Dan was officially discharged. In desperate need of a purpose and a place to go, he did what any affluent dickhead would do.
Does he
and became
still
a
post
business
stuff?
major,
Oh,
using
fuck
his
yeah.
disability money towards enrolling at the University of Florida, joining a frat, and of course, falling in love with the game of poker. Dan was only a freshman in college when he embarked on his first ever poker match, taking a liking to the game almost immediately. Staying up late and losing a ton of sleep was worth it if it meant getting to play an extra game with his classmates in between important business reasons.
He's a tier
By
1
Sunday,
Sentinel.
he was addicted, even reportedly taking out a loan on his car and selling 3 of his most
coloring book.
expensive guns
Yeah.
until he had more money to
I'm
gamble.
pretty sure he's
So
illiterate.
I went like flat broke my sophomore year, and I actually had to like sell 3 of my guns.
Oh, no.
And then I took that money and went and like played on this gambling boat. Take a boat to the boat because it had to be in international waters.
Being coached by his younger brother Adam, a real
He's the bit
professional
still boy in the
poker
prime
player,
fish.
it wasn't until his 25th birthday when he actually set foot in a real brick-and-mortar casino, ready to prove his skills in the treacherous world of gamblers, sharks, and billionaires.
Oh god, this 3-bet size on the flop. Dan's doing the money he did to this Ford Explorer a year ago.
Look, let's get one thing straight. I'm an idiot, okay? I'm not gonna pretend I know the first thing when it comes to poker. I'm really not.
I know
game
all
not
about
called
poker.
Mario Kart or Super Monkey Ball, for that matter.
I can
But
tell you
have
Dan
read
is the
comments and
best.
their gambling videos of Dan.
Best
and I
I've
know
ever
his
seen.
Skills have been repeatedly
Says the man who
brought
always
into
has to buy
question
in
by real
twice.
experts
No,
in
he's-
the game.
games.
And I think
he's
it's safe to
mastered.
say he
No,
isn't
you.
exactly
No,
the
no,
most
no.
well-respected
I know what
in
I'm
the
talking about.
community.
He's
Even
good.
Dan himself will tell you it
He's
was never
real
his
good.
life goal to become the greatest poker star of all time or anything.
As you
He
said,
just
Wispy.
wanted to be the rich asshole in the background, having his beard stroked by models. And that much is totally understandable.
Do
But
you
it
enjoy
becomes a
this?
little more
Fuck yeah.
disingenuous when you start to attribute your enormously unfathomable wealth to your non-existent poker skills. I mean, even the most professional, well-known players in the world can barely scratch Dan's estimated net worth of $200 million.
I moved to LA and I started playing a lot of these poker games, and it just, I don't know, kind
God,
of
this guy
snowballed.
is
Like, I
so
beat one guy for
boring when he
51 million,
speaks.
And
54 million.
yeah. So
Poker players make a lot of money, but not enough to justify the
some Gray
incredible
Skittles.
spending habits of Danny Boy here. We're talking $50,000 for a bed frame, okay? He would need to be one of the absolute greatest to ever live. And
Oh, yeah,
that
he
just
loves his
isn't
goats.
True.
All in all, while
He has a
Dan
lot of
did
goat
play
picks.
very aggressive, I wouldn't say that he played all that great. In fact, there was some serious button clicking going on in this match. I think that maybe he could beat some high-stakes, very soft live games, but on the internet, he's a fish in the water.
His lackluster abilities may have been enough to make him look cool in front of his audience of middle schoolers, but something about the way he presented himself in interviews and
yeah, he sucks.
Wasn't adding up, but his Instagram numbers definitely were.
I've watched like 2 collab videos YouTubers did with him. Unbearable.
Dan vowed to live his life as a bachelor to the fullest extent from then on out, using the power of the internet to transform himself into a shining beacon of inspiration for sexless teenage boys in pastel shorts all over the nation. First joining the vanity-obsessed world of Instagram in 2012, the perfect platform for Dan to show off his exhilarating lifestyle of posing with his brother and chickens. Okay, his post
and goats.
About as
he loves goats.
A clear contrast to what they'd become over the following years. Somewhere along the way, Dan realized the more extreme his pics were, the more attention they would get, and began posting anything so long as he got those sweet, sweet likes and follows. He quickly built up a reputation of partying, drinking, having drug-laced orgies with supermodels, and having 2 heart attacks by the age of 32.
Woohoo! Like, it's very important that
you did it, Dan.
2 heart attacks and 2 broken legs.
You know, they mix with other
Man
drugs,
surviving it all.
And I'm just like, you know, smoking some
He's
pot,
just the best of
mom
us.
Kind of like perks up. You know, I get a little bit of cocaine, and my dad's like looks over at me. You know, and I think I might have taken a little bit of Viagra. And then my girlfriend's like, you motherfucker. And I'm just like, maybe. And the doctor's like, it's very important that you tell us how much. I was like, yeah, I think
nothing he ever says is real.
Milligrams.
Yeah, I guess the cocaine and Viagra might have that effect. But at least he got to meet Michael Jackson's doctor, supposedly, gracing headlines for some of his more outrageous stunts, including the time he was arrested for bomb-making charges. Come on, Dan. What the f***?
Where's the resub Crow?
After blowing up his own tractor trailer, he pled no contest for failing to extinguish a fire out in the open. No jail time, no weapon restrictions, nothing. Just a measly fine of about 17 grand, which he only received because it happened on
I don't know who
property.
that is, Camino.
Not to mention
wait,
the time he
I do know
launched
who that
porn
is.
star Janice Griffith off his rooftop.
There are some details that I don't feel comfortable talking about right now.
Has Dan called you up to apologize?
He actually did not ever make an apology, unfortunately.
Weird. He seems like such a good guy.
The thing that I'm sort of I did not ever hear sorry from him.
Wow.
Panicking at last minute, she grabbed Dan's t-shirt in a split second of regret before barely missing the pool below and smashing her ankle on the way down. Thanks to his scumbag legal
You should be saying
he wasn't sued,
sorry to
unlike
Dan.
the time he kicked a woman in the face at a nightclub in steel-toed boots, in which case he was sued.
Vanessa Castano claimed.
And did she apologize to Dan for ruining his boots?
Keith Davidson that Bilzerian was on the stage at the LIV nightclub and kicked her in the face with military boots. She says she began bleeding from the face and eye. Bilzerian's people say
she didn't even try to parry
to help another woman on stage, but Castano was blocking her.
And I thought chivalry was dead. Turns out Dan just wanted to protect his girl while brutalizing another one. Can't think of anything more considerate. Almost reminds me of the time he tried to play hero during an active shooting.
Yeah, hey, he does mention it.
Shot in the fucking head. It's so fucking crazy.
Dan Bilzerian was one of 22,000 people in attendance the night a 64-year-old man opened fire at a Las Vegas music festival in October 2017. During the worst mass shooting event in American history, Dan could be seen running amongst the crowd.
Yeah, he made a whole vlog.
Documenting his live experience to his online following.
So I had to go grab a gun.
Kind of a pioneer. He did it before Logan Paul.
Fucking so crazy. Some kind of mass shooting. Fucking guy had a heavy caliber weapon for sure. Saw a girl fucking get shot in the face right next to me. Her brains fucking hanging out.
Wanting to live up to the gun-toting macho man image he'd always exhibited, Dan was determined to do whatever he could to assist the situation. I guess he figured the best way to do that was by begging to borrow a random cop's gun while people around him were literally dying.
You know better than that. I'm just saying, I don't know who the fuck you are. That's fine. I don't know who you are.
Showed you my creds. He just brought up his Instagram account. Look at my followers. Give me a gun.
Break into his house and he won't know what gun to shoot them with. He kind of became known for this menacing reputation. So the reactions from what viewers saw that night were mixed.
Thanks to the resub Slayer, the Prime Hero, resub Sinister.
While others might argue he shouldn't have distracted officers from attempting to defuse an active shooting situation. But one thing I can tell you for certain is that this wouldn't be the only time his values were questioned, and it sure wouldn't be the last time he experienced controversy.
According to all estimations, Ignite burned through over 100 million with
Yep.
about 2.5 million in gross profit in 2020. It's insane. Where did the money go, Dan? What's up, Dan?
If you could have one superpower, what would it be? To be Dan Bilzerian.
But before we get into that, it's
You should
time
challenge
for
him
an
to chess.
The wonderful and amazing Saints.
He can't even
over
read a
at
book.
Raycon.
Why
That's
would I
right,
challenge him to
Ray J
chess?
is disrupting the
I'd have to challenge him to like
electronics
Candyland or something.
Why are you skipping things?
It's the ad. We always skip the ad on Just Chatting Night.
insisted the bulk of his income was a direct result of his poker earnings, turning himself from a broke college kid to a self-made millionaire through his late 20s. But not everyone was convinced. For starters, Dan had only played in one public poker tournament, all the way back in 2009 when he came in 180th place and walked away with $36,000.
The Bilzerian brothers have been enjoying their family reunion as well, both still in this thing. That's Adam adding to his chip stack, but at another table, his brother Dan is all
Dan!
in with ace
Let's go, Dan!
pocket tens of Jonathan Tamayo.
Dan Bilzerian.
He's feeling it now.
On the river.
The river card is a king. Tamayo wins the pot and knocks off Dan Bilzerian.
Oh no!
Known for playing loose, aggressive in the eyes of fellow poker sharks, even reportedly losing $2.3 million on a simple coin toss, according to GQ. Still, Dan claims to have made the majority of his money through non-traceable cash games with billionaires in private, which is extremely convenient. Wouldn't you say?
What are the odds?
Especially considering his Instagram flexing began around the same time his father's trust funds finally became accessible.
The trust funds.
Well, that's
I guess
purely circumstantial.
When you turn 30, when you turn 35.
Dan's father, Paul Bilzerian, made a name for
What a
himself
man.
back in the 80s, when corporate
He's not a
ratings
good
were
guy.
an all-time
I'll
high.
spoil it.
According to Investopedia, investors would target failing
Did you
companies
see that
whose
mustache?
assets
I wouldn't
appeared to
trust
be
it.
No,
undervalued,
like, he's actually
buy
evil,
large
from
enough
what I
shares
recall.
to give them the controlling position at the company, and then use their power to artificially drive up the stock price, either through internal management
Thanks to
changes
Resub Red Ranger
or by
and Hey
using their
Man.
voting power to install hand-picked members to the board of directors. As long as the company's value went up, the investors would make an absolute killing. A practice that was questionable at best and straight up illegal at worst, depending on how you went about it, I guess. By 1989, though, the government had charged Paul with
Oh yeah,
fraud
I'm
and
very familiar with
conspiracy,
Dan.
failing to disclose his ownership of various companies and selling his holdings right after their stock prices skyrocketed. Insider trading in its purest form. And if only Paul had been a little more discreet, he probably would have been able to get away with it. Well, he still kinda did, but not without
He absolutely
slapping
did.
a $63 million fine and spending 13 months in federal prison for a ruling he called
He does look like
unjust.
Borat. Like, if Borat was big into fraud.
I'm not going to jail because, in the newspapers, the kids were asking me, so I'd ask him, and he's like, oh, no, definitely not. He was always like this crazy, like, eternal optimist.
Dan barely got to see his father growing up as it was, naming that lack of attention as one of the many driving forces behind his eccentric lifestyle. But Paul's arrest would prove itself traumatizing for Dan, constantly harassed by kids at school over his father being a Wall Street felon.
So we're going to school, and he's like, yeah, by the way, I'm going to jail. And I think he put it a little bit more eloquently than that. But anyways, it was...
How'd you take it?
It sucked, man. You got to go to school, and all these kids are making fun of you, and your dad's going to jail. It's like, kind of traumatizing moment.
Through a complex network of offshore banks and family partnerships, however, the Bilzerian family managed to keep living in the 28,000 square foot palace for about 20 years. Plenty of time for Dan and his brother Adam to grow up in the mansion Paul dubbed his own Taj Mahal, even while the SEC scrambled to locate the tens of millions he owed the government, only paying back an estimated 4 of the 63 million before filing bankruptcy? Come on, dude, you were not bankrupt.
In 1997, with the SEC still chasing Mr. Bilzerian's assets,
He's the prime
ownership of the mansion
Chargetta.
is transferred to a Nevada partnership owned by an offshore trust that initially has, according to court records, Mr. Bilzerian and his wife as beneficiaries and trustees. His family continues living there, even as Mr. Bilzerian, in a court filing, has said he has no assets.
Going to extreme lengths to keep ownership of the house and his wealth. To the
He's-
point where
he's
he'd
good.
rather go to
He's
prison
good.
than ever admit he was lying about his finances. To this day, that $50+ million has never been tracked down. But
Until
it'll
today,
go somewhere,
he gave it to me.
right?
You know, I mean, you read the
You wanna share?
detractors or comments they've made that, oh, nobody can make $100 million or
Well,
whatever it is playing
I'm gonna go
poker.
tell Dan Bilzerian.
You know, he's
Good
just,
luck.
you know,
Yeah,
poker's kind of
he sucks,
the
whatever.
way he says he makes his money, but he's really gotten it from the you know, trust funds, and you didn't take it.
I gave it all back, so.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I gave it to my brother.
Yeah.
He gave it to Charlie.
That makes sense.
I didn't need it, didn't want it, didn't care.
Dan has never denied the existence of a trust fund under his or his brother's name, but he has given conflicting testimonies regarding the amount of money he's actually taken from them. So first, he didn't accept any of it and instead handed everything over to his little brother because, as we all know, Dan hates money that isn't his. But we'll get to that soon. Point is, he later went back on his word, admitting he did take a little bit from the trust.
Thanks,
How
Resub
much?
Cat.
I have no idea. As of now, there isn't definitive proof that Dan and his brother's trust funds were made up of entirely SEC money, but the evidence doesn't exactly say otherwise, does it? At the end of the day, it'll probably always remain a mystery just how much Dan really inherited from his Wall Street criminal father.
So it's been so long that I'm just used to, you know, I never cared if people thought that I was good. I never gave a you know, if, you know.
Well, yeah,
how
you were
that I
fucking
got my
loaded.
money. I still don't. I don't give
from
a
birth.
They think I, you know, got it all from a trust. I don't
I mean,
care.
not at all. Like, I mean, somebody, if you've like earned it through, you know, your own intellect and hard work, it doesn't bother you at all that there's like some out there that like think that it was just handed to you.
No, I don't really, you know, the thing is, like, there's so many people praising me. I don't even like concern myself with the opinions. I mean, it sucks that I've lost all of my privacy pretty much, and I can't go anywhere without, you know, people coming up to me and, you know, wanting pictures and this and that.
By 2017, he had partied with Steve Aoki, bought his way into a Matt Damon movie, and hooked up with 10,000 women.
Yeah!
In store next for the man who had done it all. Well, launching his own CBD business, of course.
So what is the most exciting thing about the cannabis industry today? Why should people be excited about your product?
I mean, because it's going to be one of the best products in the industry, and it's going to be consistent across state lines. We're going to have global distribution.
I imagine all the strains are just infused with Dan Bilzerian's pubic hair, and then like they just
Fuck
somehow,
yeah.
like, create an STD that he's had from like a model or some shit. Yeah. So maybe they just name it after the model and then the STD.
I just really think he's never fucked any of the models. I think he just pays them to take those pictures and then they go home.
Dan Bilzerian launched
That's my
the company
theory.
Ignite, selling everything from cannabis products to clothing.
He's done open casting calls for models to go pose with him for
Plastering this
pictures.
stupid goat logo on anything he can get his greasy fingers on. $39.99 for placebo gummies? Like, if this were the Lorax, I'm sure Dan would find a way to slap the Ignite logo on a bottle of air too. But by February 2019, Ignite was off
Thanks
to
to
the
Resub
races,
Phantom.
with the brand finally going public on the Canadian stock market, debuting at a share price of about $2.51. All the meanwhile, the Ignite House YouTube channel, hosted by models Desi and Kayla, began pumping out lifestyle vlog-type content that showcased even more details of Dan's highly luxurious daily routine.
You want to run
You're right. Everybody wanted to do it.
Found one of his goats.
I think Dan should run naked.
All right, that's an offer. If any of y'all do it, I'll give you $50,000.
I'll do it.
Okay. Somebody get her a fucking bicycle.
I mean, what?
For $50,000? Yeah, sure. Fuck it, I'll do it, Dan.
Answers the door, $50,000.
If he answers the door.
Yeah.
What if he doesn't? No deal?
$10,000 just for going.
If he doesn't answer, then you're fired.
Redhead Ray, R-A-Y-E. So, there you go, guys. You can stop asking
She
now.
loves dick pics. Slide in the DMs.
Yeah, nothing weird or toxic to see here, folks.
She's running away.
No.
She says, no, I can't do it.
I'm gonna be right back.
She's gonna be back. She's off camera. She's gonna contemplate things. There'll be many Uber drivers checking her out as they drive by there.
Along with the new brand, Dana also boasted his massive purchase of a $63 million mansion on CNBC
baby.
with the guy from Shark Tank, completely decked out with a 12-foot waterfall, infinity pool, tennis courts, and a parking lot fit for a fucking airplane. Not a bad start, especially considering Dan's rampant social media presence reaching an estimated 500 million people every month. The company should have no problem getting off the ground and selling CBD oil to the masses, right?
Except Dan steals the money.
Well, maybe Dan should have stayed in business school.
The mansions, the yachts, the parties, the models. How does Dan Bilzerian, the globe-trotting, cash-stacking, gun-toting, Instagram-boasting, partying playboy do it? According to a lawsuit filed this week, he doesn't. Dan Bilzerian rents
that's the secret.
And charges the rest of his
That's the Krabby Patty secret formula.
Credit card that someone else pays off.
See, in 2019, Ignite made money in two ways, and no, neither of those were actually selling products. Ignite issued and sold shares of its own company's stock, along with raising money via debt, according to Forbes, receiving about $25 million from proceeds of insurance sales, $19 million from convertible debt, and another $23.7 million from a short-term promissory note, which basically meant Ignite was holding on to a bunch of other people's money. Instead of actually using it to benefit the company or their constituents or whatever, it was all wasted by Dan himself.
Fuck yeah, Dan! Let's go!
Ignite was essentially being used as nothing more than Dan Bilzerian's own personal piggy bank. That's right. As Ignite's stock value plummeted, Dan continued to swipe
putting Dan in charge.
$15,000 for a ping pong table, $40,000 for a rock climbing wall, $128,000 for a 2-night stay in London, $130,000 for a photo shoot in the Bahamas, but only because he had to pay all those models.
These girls are on payroll. Wake up, buddy. Nobody fucking flies on a jet and goes to hang out with this dude. No, it's not how it works.
True.
I kind of
Very
like
true.
out that life is more about setup. You know, I wanted to like set it up so that I could get laid without like having a bunch of conversations and dates and whatnot. So.
Yeah, money's the fastest way, I guess.
Enormous personal expenses would inevitably land Dan and his business in massive legal trouble thanks to a lawsuit filed by Ignite's former president, Curtis Heffernan. After refusing to approve of his boss's negligent spending, like, you know, an $800,000 yacht rental, Curtis was quickly axed from the company, to which he responded by suing Dan for wrongful termination immediately after. I mean, the guy was just trying to do his fucking job is all. Outlined in that very lawsuit, began to reveal much of what many seem to already speculate regarding Dan's seemingly extravagant appearance. The famous Ignite parties hosted at Dan's mansion were some of the most exclusive and exotic events in the area. They were synonymous with Dan's image, but that's because it was all he seemed to care about. Vanity. He wanted to be seen as the guy, the rich asshole who could pull women effortlessly thanks to his iconic branding. But that's all it was, branding. Ignite as a company was hollow beyond any of the glitz and glamour seen on Instagram. As noted by Forbes contributor and local CBD expert Chris Roberts, I cover weed and CBD for a living. I live in an area absolutely saturated with CBD products, and I do not think I have ever seen an Ignite product out in the wild. Nobody was buying
and you never will.
As public records show, the company lost a grand total of $50 million
Let's go, Dan!
a year, with the stock value shrinking to about 68 cents at the time of me recording this. And as the lawsuit revealed, Dan didn't even
I'm gonna invest in Ignite.
Instead,
I want to help Dan fuck models.
$100,000 a month and sticking somebody else with the tab. It's actually really funny that CNBC had to go back and change the title of their tour once the truth came out.
He reportedly paid a mind-boggling $65 million for this mega mansion. Dan says he made $50 million playing high-stakes poker.
I'd have to talk to my accountant about all of it. I don't know.
Of course, Dan denies everything.
Exit Prime November and Risa Bezazel.
And plans on countersuing his former president, but that hasn't stopped anonymous employees from coming out of the woodwork and confirming Heffernan's very claims. Ignite pays for everything, one said. Models, events, yachts. Dan would just have it wrapped with the Ignite logo, and all of a sudden, it was an Ignite expense, and he would send them the bill. Yeah, I mean, one look at his Instagram, and that seems to check out. Some claims even seem to show his dad was running the show behind the scenes, which is illegal since he can't touch another American company after being convicted of fraud. Oh, that's why it's listed on the Canadian market.
He is, I think he's a St. Kitts citizen, and I think he gave up his U.S. citizenship.
You don't talk to him?
I talk to him probably 4 or 5 times a year.
You really don't get rewarded for your honesty.
In many ways, Dan Bilzerian can be seen as the real-life Tony Stark. That is, if Tony Stark was surrounded by a rotating cast of nameless models he paid for, lied about where his money came from, distracted an officer during an active shooting, and drove Stark Enterprises into the ground. To Dan's credit, it's
just like Tony Stark.
A sense of real accomplishment when everything in life has been handed to you. Growing up surrounded by such tremendous wealth must have a real impact on a person's psyche, and I can only imagine how insignificant
Oh, it looks like
Dan
Tom
must have
Cruise there.
having always lived
Holy
in
shit.
his father's shadow, constantly in search of a fragment of individuality he could claim as his own. After priding himself on being
Thanks for the
authentic
resub.
and upfront about the way he lives his life, it's painfully ironic to see how everything is panned out as a result of peeling back the curtain. But it does go on to perfectly emphasize what can happen when a silver spoon chud takes over as CEO of a company while possessing no business experience or a significant level of maturity whatsoever.
It's like a Renaissance painting. That was cool. Never mind, I like Dan now.
Whether it's photoshopping celebrities on Instagram or using other people's money towards his own personal ventures, the very foundation of his credibility is built on deception. He didn't do it on his own, he just got lucky. And if you ask me, Dan is only another spoiled trust fund recipient, posing as a beneficiary to the fictional American
But he's good at it.
A reminder to all of us that his self-made playboy lifestyle is far from the idealistic utopia he wants us to think it is, and that a pristine social media presence can conceal even the dirtiest of secrets.
But it's not though. No one thinks he did it himself.
The worst thing Dan has done.
Nobody.
My first video on Dan was from 2015, and it was my first video to clock in 500,000 views. So to be completely honest with you guys, well, I gotta give Dan Bilzerian a huge thank you for helping me launch this channel.
Okay. That was good. That was a good video. I remember when I first found Dan, it was back in, I think, 2015. And I fell in love with that man. Dan's a hero.
Saw him crowd surfing on a raft.
Dan's a fucking hero. What a guy. He's able to pay models like no one else. God damn it. And he has goats and shit. Thanks to the Prime Noel. Put Dan in your guys' porno? That's a really good... Would Dan want to play a role in the porno?
Oh, 100%.
Do you think? Well, no, he would absolutely not want to be on camera.
No, he would want to put his money into it for so much amount of time on screen.
Alright, well, Jesus Christ, yeah, that'd be nice. Hey, Dan, look, it's an open invitation. It's called The Fucking It Rock Hard Manor. Posted the video going through episode 1 script. If you like it, we say it so you don't have to read because I know you can't do that. So if you like the script, Dan... Just reach out and we can find you a role. I think maybe like a Colonel Demeter would probably fit. He definitely couldn't play Mike Mitchell, but like Colonel Demeter would probably work. Thanks to Tier 1 Kyle in the Prime Existential Ash and Bavrim. Yeah, we're going to do slapping in just a minute. I want to fill up my water and take a tinkle, so when I do that, we can watch the semifinals. So just give me 1 second. Thanks to the resub, James. You going to bed?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. I'll say goodnight as well. So I'll be back in just a minute.
Alright. Yeah, I'm gonna, yeah.